No one expected it. Not even the most dedicated armies who had followed every second of Jin's solo journey could have predicted what would unfold that night. Under the blinding lights and the roaring echoes of a sold-out arena, Jin, usually calm, composed, and radiant with confidence, suddenly broke down in tears. But what happened next turned a concert into a moment that will forever live in BTS history. Jungkook and J-Hope rushed to his side, wrapped their arms around him, and held him so tightly that even the world seemed to stop breathing. What made Jin cry? Why did his tears fall so suddenly, right in the middle of what was supposed to be his happiest night? The crowd had been screaming his name, thousands of armies waving their light sticks like purple stars. Everything was perfect until Jin paused, pressed a hand over his chest, and whispered something that only the front rows could hear. His voice trembled, his eyes shimmered, and before anyone could react, his tears began to fall. Jungkook, who was standing just a few steps away, noticed immediately. His expression changed from playful to worried in an instant. Without hesitation, he ran toward Jin, followed closely by J-Hope. Both of them reached him almost at the same time, their movements full of urgency and love. Jungkook was the first to wrap his arms around Jin, holding him tightly as if he was protecting an older brother who suddenly looked fragile. J-Hope followed, closing the embrace, whispering words that microphones couldn't catch, but hearts could somehow hear. The screens showed the three of them in that embrace, and for a few seconds, the entire arena fell into silence. Even the lights dimmed slightly, as if giving space for this raw emotion to unfold. Jin leaned his forehead on Jungkook's shoulder, his tears soaking into the younger's shirt. J-Hope rubbed his back softly, nodding with quiet understanding. It wasn't a dramatic breakdown. It was something more honest, more human. It was Jin, stripped of the idol facade, standing there as Kim Seokjin, a man who had carried both his dreams and his burdens for years. Was it exhaustion? Gratitude? The realization that something beautiful was coming to an end? Armies in the audience asked themselves the same questions as tears began to stream down their own faces. For many, it was the first time they had seen Jin so openly vulnerable. This wasn't a confident performer who had conquered stages around the world. This was Jin, the heart of BTS, letting go for just a moment, surrounded by the love of his brothers. "Hyung, it's okay." Jungkook was seen saying softly, his microphone still on but his voice barely audible. "We're here." J-Hope nodded beside him, his own eyes glassy with emotion. "You did well, Hyung," he whispered, a smile trembling on his lips. And that was when Jin finally smiled too, a fragile, teary smile that made the audience break into sobs. The video clips of this moment would later flood the internet within minutes. Fans around the world replayed it again and again, analyzing every glance, every gesture, every whispered word. Some said Jin cried because the reality of performing again after so long finally hit him. Others believed he was overwhelmed by gratitude, by the love he felt from ARMY and his fellow members. But there was something deeper, something almost spiritual, in the way that moment unfolded, that IT wasn't just about tears. It was about years. Years of waiting, of separation, of silent prayers for reunion. It was about the weight of time, the distance between their last performance as Seven and this moment of togetherness. Jungkook and J-Hope's embrace wasn't just comfort, it was acknowledgement. A silent message that said, "We made it here together, and no matter what happens next, we're still us." The lights slowly turned purple again. The crowd began chanting Jin's name louder than ever before, not as an idol, but as a man whose honesty had touched their hearts. Jin wiped his tears, took a deep breath, and raised his microphone. His voice cracked at first, but when he finally spoke, every word carried the weight of his soul. "I'm sorry," he said softly, his voice trembling. I felt something so strong. Seeing you all here, after everything, it's too much." Jungkook, still holding on to him, shook his head. "Don't apologize, Hyung," he said, smiling through tears. "This is love." The audience screamed. Some armies clutched their banners tighter. Others simply stood frozen, unable to process the beauty of what they were witnessing. It was a moment that defied explanation, a collision of memory, music, and human emotion. After a few seconds, Jin began to sing again. His voice was slightly hoarse, his eyes still glistening, but every note he delivered felt deeper, fuller, as if those tears had carved out new meaning in his music. Jungkook harmonized softly beside him, J-Hope clapping along, the three of them laughing through their tears. The arena, once a place of spectacle, had become a cathedral of emotion, sacred, silent, and electric all at once. Somewhere in the crowd, an army shouted, "We love you, Jin." The words echoed across the stage, and Jin looked up, smiling faintly. "I love you too," he replied. "You've always been my strength." And then he said something that made everyone cry again. "Do you know what's the hardest part?" he asked softly. "It's not the rehearsals or the flights or the long nights. It's saying goodbye, even for a moment, because every time I do, I never know when I'll see you again. But today, I realized something. I'm never really away from you. Because you're here," he pointed to his heart, "and I'm here." That was it. The crowd erupted. Thousands of purple lights swayed like a sea of emotion. Thousands of hearts beating as one. As the concert continued, Jin regained his composure, his playful energy returning bit by bit. Jungkook and J-Hope stayed close, often exchanging glances that carried more meaning than words ever could. It was clear that their bond had grown even stronger through that brief moment of vulnerability. For them, it wasn't just a performance. It was healing. Backstage later that night, staff members described the atmosphere as emotional but peaceful. Jin reportedly thanked everyone, from the lighting crew to the dancers, before sitting quietly for a few minutes, staring at the empty stage. When someone asked him if he was okay, he smiled and said, "I am now." That single sentence summed it all up. He was okay, because in the middle of his tears, he had been reminded of why he began this journey in the first place. For connection, for love, for something bigger than fame. Armies would later flood social media with messages like, "We cried with you, Jin," and "That hug was everything." Some even said that watching him cry made them feel closer to him than ever. It was as if Jin's tears had given permission for everyone else to be human too, to feel, to break, to heal. And maybe that's why this moment will never fade. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't planned. It was real. The next day, Jin posted a short message on Weverse. "Last night was emotional. Thank you for being my wings." Jungkook commented, "Hyung, always together." J-Hope added, "Crying with you is healing, not sadness." Those words alone were enough to send armies back into tears. What truly made the moment legendary wasn't just the image of Jin crying, it was the embrace. The way Jungkook's hand stayed on Jin's shoulder even after the song ended. The way J-Hope's laughter turned into quiet reassurance. The way Jin, after everything, stood taller when he finally lifted his head as though, was it sadness? Relief? Love? Maybe it was all of them. Maybe it was simply truth. That night, Jin didn't just sing. He let the world see the heart behind his voice. And Jungkook and J-Hope, as brothers, not just bandmates, reminded everyone watching that BTS's story has always been about something deeper than music.